Now, it's getting colder and we are entering the season of bronchitis and other chest infections. But just as it appears that one of our frontline antibiotics for these conditions, Augmentin, is in very low supply, pharmacists say that they're very concerned about this. I'm joined now by Darragh O'Loughlin, who's Secretary General of the Irish Pharmacy Union. Darragh, thanks very much for joining us this morning. First off, just to explain to me, how widely used is Augmentin? How important is it in our armoury against bacteria?
I would say every GP in Ireland prescribes Augmentin a number of times every single day, and every pharmacist dispenses it umpteen times a day as a result. It's one of the first antibiotics that GPs and other prescribers would use for sinus infections, chest infections, urinary infections. Dentists use it to treat abscesses. It's extremely widely used. Because it's effective.
So vital. I mean, we'll talk about other alternatives in a minute, but first of all, why is it now in short supply? What's gone wrong?
Well, as medicine prices come down around the world, medicines are commoditising, so they're being manufactured in fewer and fewer locations. So in the case of Augmentin, the two factories that currently produce it have, for various reasons, stopped production at the moment. One has a capacity issue, another one has an issue with getting the active ingredient. So because the factories are not outputting any product, it means that once the current supplies are all used up, there won't be any more until we understand later next year. And
when you say capacity issue, is this because Augmentin isn't that profitable to make and they've moved on to another drug?
Well, Augmentin is a brand name, but the medicine itself is called coamoxiclav, and there are a number of generic suppliers out there. And it is a low price, low cost product. Even people who use it here will have seen the price has tumbled over the last couple of years. So if I'm a manufacturer and I have one factory, I'm going to manufacture something that's more profitable than something that's less profitable. And I don't think anybody would have anticipated that everybody else would stop manufacturing it at the same time.
Right. So what is the solution to that?
Well, we can't conjure up more of this product from thin air. There is still coamoxiclav being produced elsewhere in the world. There are other manufacturers in Europe producing it, but they wouldn't necessarily have the capacity to take up the slack where the GSK plant isn't producing. At the moment, the price in Ireland is probably lower than the price in a lot of other European markets, so they're likely to get the stock before we do.
So we won't get whatever is left because it's cheaper.
We have stock in Ireland right now, but what I understand is that once that stock runs out, which will be sometime around Christmas, we won't get any more stock until the third quarter of next year.
And then, Darragh, how are we fixed for alternatives? I mean, can we not just switch to other antibiotics?
Well, you can't just switch willy-nilly. What's really important, because of something called antibiotic resistance, is that we not jump to using other rarely used antibiotics and stronger antibiotics, because ultimately that weakens them, and then in the future they become less effective for people who really need them. So what we believe needs to happen now is the HSE needs to work with the medical colleges and the Department of Health and issue prescribing guidelines for doctors so that they will know what to prescribe, what is available, and rather than jumping to the strongest antibiotic, maybe give them guidelines around use amoxicillin for certain infections, use clarithromycin for other infections, and so on, and use the less strong antibiotics so that we keep the stronger ones in reserve for when they're really needed.
And I suppose as going into the future, I mean, if this is a problem this year, because it seems part of the problem is it's not profitable enough as a drug, how do we guard against this happening? I mean, you know, we don't want to hear that we have to put the price up in order to keep a good supply of Augmentin. Should it be manufactured in other ways? Should we look to manufacture it here ourselves? Or?
Well, we have an indigenous generic medicine manufacturing industry, but they wouldn't necessarily have the manufacturing capacity in Ireland to supply all the medicines that they sell to the Irish market, because they'd need a separate line to manufacture each one. We don't need to be shoving prices up to astronomical levels. That wouldn't make any sense. I think what we need to do is ensure that the price that the manufacturer achieves here is at least as good as they would get in any other European market, so our market is at least as attractive as any other market when supplies are limited. And for whatever reason, this antibiotic Augmentin, it attracts a price in the hundreds of dollars in the United States for a prescription. I just saw that in the New York Times the other day. That makes no sense to me.
What's it cost here?
I would say at retail level about €10 for a prescription.
Really? That's very unusual, isn't it, to find a medicine that is so much cheaper in Ireland than elsewhere? I mean, we're always hearing it the other way around.
That's because they're the only ones we hear about. Medicine prices fluctuate up and down all over the world, so there are medicines that are cheaper in Ireland, and as a result they sometimes run short because we don't get sufficient supply of the medicines. Even if they come into Ireland, they go back out through something called parallel trade, or they end up in other markets. But the United States has very high medicine prices. It's famous for it.
They'll follow the money. Just to conclude, I mean, do you think we're okay? Like, it's not going to be a massive crisis. There are alternatives. It's just not ideal.
People won't die. People won't suffer. if we put plans in place now and if we make sure that the restricted or limited supplies of Augmentin that we have are used only for the patients that particularly need them, but for other patients where a different antibiotic or a milder antibiotic would be sufficient, they should be getting that one so as to guard the supplies of Augmentin for the people that really need it. And GPs and pharmacists will be working together to make sure that happens, but guidance has to come from the Department of Health and the HSE.
OK, super. Darragh, thank you very much indeed for coming in to us this morning. Thanks.